Well, it's hugely important for a couple of reasons, because that's what clinicians are going to be using in their rehabilitation practice to try and assist people with brain injury to make the best recovery that they can. The other reason that it's important is that there's a lot of literature out there. So when I started clinical practice, there was hardly any literature available to guide the clinician in what interventions would be effective. And now we've got, it's the other end of the spectrum. So we've got so much literature, it's just difficult to know which particular study you should be using. That's important because a lot of literature is of, in fact, very poor quality. So we really want to be looking at what's the best literature that's going to guide our interventions.
And so how would you go about assessing what's the best literature?
Well, there's no easy way to that. It's not by glancing at the papers, it's not by asking your colleague. It's actually by sitting down and critically appraising that literature, particularly the methodology.
And do you think clinicians have the expertise to do that, do you think?
Well, that's variable. It's not something that's taught in university courses, so in a sense, no. And that needs to be addressed by clinicians in their continuing education courses, and being trained in always keeping at the fore of new developments. So one of these new developments in response to addressing the quantum of literature that there is out there is about how to critically appraise. It's a complex area, and it does take, we run day-long workshops in training clinicians to do that.
And so how do you think a clinician could incorporate the research that you're doing into their clinical practice?
Well, there'd be a number of ways. I think clinicians are very busy people, so one does not want to necessarily be being prescriptive about things. But I think in this day, of evidence-based practice, we do have to be accountable, and we do have to be measuring whether what we do has an effect. So I would be advocating the use of either single case experiments or some other variation of that, and I've been working with other clinicians in developing a model that can be used by clinicians in everyday practice to be trying to say, well, this is how I do it now, and maybe I can use a more sophisticated intervention for my next client. I also think that they need to be up to date with the literature, because the literature does contain some gems and new directions, and that's where they'll know the interventions that would be useful to implement.